Yeah. Real life situations. I'm curious. What would you do? What would you do in a sticky situation when temptation seems so intoxicating? Would you avoid its silent vocalization, or would you give in to its persuasive reputation? When times get rough, all you do is start hating irrational choices without even contemplating. This is the story of a girl named Betty Sue. Fell into some shit she thought she'd never do. Began in 3rd grade when she started sniffing glue, and as the years passed, her drug addiction grew. Started smoking weed, doing coke and acid too, and by the 8th grade she had been tattooed by illegal narcotics, and her concentration skewed. Paranoid at every turn, making her sanity bruised. In high school she used to beg her mom for loot. Told her mom it was required for lessons to play the flute, but secretly she would spend it on crystal meth and shoot. Her mom was blind to it back then and never knew, but Betty Sue was grown now with living in a box. No socks, and to top it off she's running from the cops, making all the money by sucking the fellas' cocks. And one day like that she decided to stop, jumped off a bridge and landed on jagged rocks. So what would you do in a sticky situation when temptation seems so intoxicating? Would you avoid its silent vocalization, or would you give in to its persuasive reputation? When times get rough, all you do is start hating irrational choices without even contemplating. 17 years old with a heart of solid gold, and one day David decided to be bold. Went against all things which he was sternly told. Met up with some friends one night when it was cold. Presented a gat, held up at his brother Pat. In fact, Pat was mad at the way his brother act. David is forced to make a critical choice. To be jumped into the gang, he would have to off this boy. Simply pull the trigger, that's all that it would take. His uneasiness grew bigger, then he caught his brother's face. Tears flowing down the eyes of his own blood. Only would take a second to get this hazing done. Either save your bro or pull the trigger of the gun. His eyes closed shut as he gripped the pistol tight. Scores back the trigger, broke the silence of the night. David lost this fight, and his sense was rather far. Now D waits on trial behind cold metal bars, looking up to the stars, and then there was a pause. Guilty motherfucker, now you die for selfish cause. Now, what would you do in a sticky situation when temptation seems so intoxicating? Would you avoid its silent vocalization, or would you give in to its persuasive reputation? When times get rough, all you do is start hating irrational choices without even contemplating. Boy and girl in love, an unbreakable couple. Boy stayed true, his thoughts were never shuffled. But one day, girl had an urge which made her muffled, and it ruffled the relationship, and girl began to roam. Wrestled her from school, agreed to take her home. Unfortunately for her, the driver was very stoned. Suggested to her he wanted to make a moan, wanted the bitch to ride his rigid bone. Meanwhile, the boy is sitting at home alone, and girl is thinking if wrestler could make a groan. Ripping off her clothes in the backseat of his whip, they started fucking hard, and then the condom ripped. 2 months later, found out she'd have a kid. Poor boy so mad he lost it, then he flipped. Loaded up his 9 and smoked a dime a kind. Rolled to the player's house and made it a drive-by. Murdered the wrestler while the boy was super high. Took a detour to the horse house to make her cry. Rang the doorbell and the bitch came to the window. Boy cursed her out and called her a dirty bimbo. Told that bitch she played her more than a Nintendo. Sounds of screaming now progressed to a crescendo. Boom, boom, boom was all you heard. Fuck you, bitch, with 3 audible words. He said, fuck this, and fuck the world. Shit's crazy, man. Crazy real life situations. But yo, what would you do? What would you do in a sticky situation when temptation seems so intoxicating? Would you avoid its silent vocalization, or would you give in to its persuasive reputation? When times get rough, all you do is start hating irrational choices without even contemplating. What would you do in a sticky situation when temptation seems so intoxicating? Would you avoid its silent vocalization, or would you give in to its persuasive reputation? When times get rough, all you do is start hating irrational choices without even contemplating. I ain't playing real life situations. But tell me, what would you do? Yeah, 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 what would you do?